Okay, so it's streaming live on Facebook.
Not yet.
Oh,
We're
okay.
almost there. We're almost there. I'm so sorry.
It's
Here
okay.
we go. Okay, great, Norma. We are live.
Wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time. We really, really do. And I was so disappointed that I didn't get to see you at the Tucson Festival of Books.
I was disappointed too. I was actually in Tucson. I went and then found out that it was canceled.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Um, so we're all trying to obviously communicate about our authors and about our work, and you with your students and your colleagues through this new format. Not so new, but most people haven't embraced Zoom for the way we're embracing it now, right?
That's right. I had only had meetings through Zoom. I had never taught a class through Zoom.
So one of the questions for you is, right now in our borderlands communities, just community itself is so important in different ways, either in action or in gathering and communicating with each other and socializing. How do you find folks are still in your neck of the woods? How are people still connecting, do you find?
Well, through Zoom, we just had a little chat with sisters who are in Laredo and in Austin, Antonio, and Dallas. We're going to have a sisters reunion via Zoom. So that's one way. But the other thing, I think the most important part is that many of our communities don't have access to internet.
That
Uh,
is
yeah, just the internet itself. So it's harder to keep in touch. The community in Laredo, which is the one I'm familiar with, because that's my hometown, is doing what everybody else is doing, the social distancing, the masks. The city council there did that earlier than most places, thankfully. I have a sister who's a nurse there in Laredo, and it's been hard. It's just the way it is. I also think that we have been communicating the way we always do through family, through our networks, phones, and in a way, it's brought communities closer. In some ways, people are calling each other instead of just texting. So I think there's a difference.
that's cool. Yeah, using the phone more. Um, so the book you have with us, Meditación Fronteriza, is a book of poetry. Yes, thank you. And it's your first book of published poems, correct?
It's the first collection.
Collection. Okay.
But we did have another book that came out 2015, I think. That's a poetry and art collaboration with Marta Sanchez. That one is called Transcendental Train Yards, and it's Marta's artwork and my poetry. So it's that kind of is the first poetry book. But this is the first collection of my poetry. Yes, that's correct.
And it's a collection of poetry that spans about 40 years, correct?
That's correct. I've been writing for about that long, maybe even longer, but I haven't published them, especially not in a collection. They've been published here and there in journals, in other people's anthologies, things like that. Yes.
These poems are really focused on our borderlands and kind of both the love and grieving of life in our borderlands, um, and also, but also the timing of this book in that way seemed to be perfect, just perfect. And I wondered if that was one of the reasons why you felt it was important to get these out there.
Uh, yes, I don't know that the poems are not dated, curiously enough, because the reality stays the same. We are still a militarized zone. There's still problems and issues that are going on now that were there 40 years ago, or even earlier, from 1848 on. And so some of that reality is still there. I did want to highlight like the indigenous past. So there are a few poems that talk about that, about the people that were there before the Spanish came, before it was Texas, before it was Laredo, Nuevo Laredo. It also is a transnational experience. So there's poems that go back and forth to Mexico and the US. I guess all of those reasons, but it didn't occur to me, oh, this is the right time for this book to come out. It just happened that I had been wanting to put the poems into a collection. And it seemed that summer of 2016, when I worked on it, it seemed to be the right time to just kind of collect the different poems. I was working on a novel that came out about the same time. And so this was kind of my distraction, kind of like something else that is not working on the novel was working on the collection. I didn't do any revising. I didn't add any poems. I just put the ones that were already there.
Wonderful. The other thing about this work too that's really reflective of our region is the fact that they're in Spanish and English. Some translated.
I know. Well, some of that is my process. I'm bilingual. I speak Spanish and English equally well. And I think for poetry especially, sometimes the work is in Spanish. They just come in Spanish. I've been writing poems now with the COVID-19 pandemic, and curiously enough, most of those are in English. I was thinking about that yesterday. I started on April 1st for National Poetry Month. I'm posting them on Facebook, and every day I post a poem, and I realized they were all in English. And that's kind of different for me because most of my poetry begins in Spanish or Spanglish, and then there's a twist and it goes into English. Very rarely does the poem begin and end in English only. So it's a kind of a psycholinguistic phenomenon, if you will, that's going on. And yes, some of the poems I translated, not all. I have some that are all in Spanish or not translated, but not too many, because I do want readers to have access to the poems. Of course, nowadays you can do Google Translate and translate anything, although I don't recommend it, especially for poetry. It just doesn't do it.
You never know what you're going to get with Google Translate sometimes. The book, since the book has come out, has it been interesting to you, the reaction to the poems?
Absolutely. It's been a very pleasant surprise. I didn't expect it actually, because I know how poetry doesn't sell. I know how poetry is not necessarily the highlight. You don't do a lot of reading. Now, being a co-founder of Tanto Mundo, I know and I believe in the power of poetry, and I really want poetry, especially by Chicanas, to be out there, to be for people to be exposed to that poetic voice and that poetic sensibility. But I know the reality is people just don't go there. A lot of people don't like poetry, or they don't like certain kinds of poetry. They don't understand certain poems. So I realized all that, and so I'm surprised that when I do readings, there's a really positive reaction to some of the poems. There are some that are a little more accessible, if you will, so I can understand why that community would respond to those. I don't know, maybe it's because some of the poems are very literal. They're narrative poems, they tell stories, they are character sketches, and so those are more accessible.
Do you feel like part of mentioning Canto Mundo and bringing this book out, birthing this book, so to speak, do you feel like that's a charge that you have, is of moving along Chicana poets and having them find their voices?
I'm laughing because, yeah, obviously, because I always see myself as on a mission. And one of my many missions in life has been to promote Chicana poetry and to kind of push that whenever I can, however I can. And so, yes, absolutely. It's kind of a charge, it's a mission, it's a duty, even for those of us who are in this literary world, to honor and acknowledge and pay reverence to the poets that have come before us, that are here with us now. I tell my students, we can't just read the poets that have passed. We need to read the poets that are living, and we need to support that. And in a way, that's kind of what I was doing. There are several poems here that have to do with other poets and also historical characters like Emma Tenayuca or Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. So there's this mission to, in a way, proselytize poetry and tell people about it and get more people to read poetry.
Whose shoulders do you stand on?
Oh, I mentioned Sor Juana, and I think all the poets that I've ever read. I mean, in terms of the writing of the poets, on a personal level, my mother, my grandmothers, las tías, all of the women in my life who have kind of given me a sense of who I am in this world, who have taught me how to be in the world. I really feel we always are building on what others have given us. And for me, it's three, the family, las tías, their la herencia, if you will, that legacy. But the second part, I think, is the writers, the ones that I love reading over and over, the ones that I go to at times. I love to read poetry. I love to share poetry. And in a way, I think the third main kind of impetus or people I stand on the shoulders on are all the people that are my readers and the people that have taught me how to be. And I'm including here, obviously, friends like Ana Castillo, Sandra Cisneros, Denise Chavez, all the Chicana writers that have come before, and the contemporary ones, Reina Grande, Lorian Guerrero. I mean, there's a whole cadre of Chicana writers that I love reading and I learned from by reading them.
Maestra Cantú, would you bless us with reading one or two poems from your current book, please?
Sure. Do you have a preference? Do you have a preference? Do you have a request?
I don't have a request. Let me see if we have any writers or people who've chimed into our live stream that may have a request. I don't see anything right now, but you never know as we continue.
Sure. Well, do you want happy? Do you want sad? Do you want historical? A character? I'm at a loss.
Is there something you feel like, even though you're writing right now, you're spending this National Poetry Month on COVID-19 poems, is there something within this collection you think reflects a bit of what we're also going through right now?
Well, maybe the ones that have to do with the violence on the border. And, I do have one that addresses that. It's July 14th, South Texas, July 14th. And this was in 2014 when there was escalation of arrest of minors, unaccompanied minors. South Texas, July 2014. Yesterday, released to the surf and poured eggs, the turtles, mere hatchlings. Someday, they will return to this very shore, this gulf. Following their own timing, they go, they come. Yesterday, they kidnapped him. Today, murdered him. My friend's father. He was 65, a loving father, a businessman, a husband, an uncle. Now he is a statistic. What's left? A son, a widow, a community grieving the loss, in pain. The 11 or 14-year-old boy from Honduras wearing Angry Birds pants his uncle's telephone number on his belt. The uncle in Chicago. They found the boy's decomposing body in the brush. Alone. He wandered off, away from the others, lost, to die, alone. From such stuff, nightmares. Mi cariño, huérfano de ver. The cotton plant, a green seed, not yet ready. Greet July. Wait for August. Y sus capullos de algodón. Who will be there to grieve? Who, when all are dead and gone? Who will release the hatcheries? Who? Will the turtles return to nothing? That's pretty bad. Let me read something that's a little more nostalgic and perhaps not as sad. It's a poem that I read at all my readings. I sometimes read that one too, just to highlight the reality of what we're going through. Miel de Mezquite. By the way, this poem won an award in the Rio Grande Valley from River's Edge Journal. So it's the only poem I've ever won an award with. So I'm particularly fond of it. I really think it's my baby that went off and did well. Miel de Mezquite. Every spring, explosion of new green surprises me. The mesquite in our yard wears an Easter frock, accessorized with yellow blossoms. Soon, the fruit, juicy and crunchy at once, will weigh down scrawny limbs. The niña, on lazy, dusty evenings after homework, after playing a las escondidas, I harvested bean pods, la miel from the tree trunk. I chewed on sweet mesquite fruit. We, siblings and neighbors, trade stories in the dimming eve as we go through pod after pod. The waxing moon can't wait to be full. Soon, Mommy calls out our names. Norma, Tino, Laura, Elsa, Leti, Mari, Sandra, Celia, Julio, Jerry, Ricky. In her 80s, alone, Mommy dwells in the past. Her children still crowd around for dinner, bean tacos and cinnamon tea with milk. Ghost children, laughing, playing, arguing, crying, sleeping, keep her company. The mesquite still there, still surprises me. La miel de mesquite still sweet, still lingers.
That's great.
Thank you. I don't know. Do you want me to read my mother's hand? That's another one that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would have requested that. It didn't. Yes, please. That would be great.
And I don't know, the idea of going home that was in that last poem, and then the celebration of that personal history that I think is really a communal history. When I read that poem about the mesquite pods, you don't know how many people come up to me and say, I did that. I also chewed on the mesquite pods. And when we were doing it, we're not thinking anything of it. It was just what you did, right, as kids. But I think now, in retrospect, it functions for me kind of like a memory jog. It kind of reminds me of that time and place where I was growing up, where things were so different. That border where we could come and go and cross. There was violence. I'm not saying there wasn't, but it wasn't the way it is now. It's changed. My mother's hands, those hands, her hands. I know them well. My mother's hands, hands that wipe many a baby's bottom, hands that crocheted booties and hats and blouses and scarves, tablecloths, Afghans. Those hands that rolled out thousands of tortillas, empanadas, high crust, tortillas de azúcar, Hands that lovingly caressed my father's face, that wiped the child's feverish forehead, that playfully patted a passing child behind, maybe even raised a chancla to threaten a child acting all chiflado. Hands that massaged a colicky baby with olive oil. Hands that smacked a mosquito about to bite her baby, equally adept, shoot away a fly from landing on her face. Hands expulgando a grandchild en las tardes de verano, piojito, or expulgando a beloved pet looking for pulgas or garrapatas. These are my mother's hands. In youth, deftly applying lipstick, now gently, obsessively, nervously twitching. Wrinkled and worn out, yet warm and loving, she holds out her hands. Mira qué vieja estoy, she exclaimed, surprised by the wrinkled skin, the liver spot, the twitch. At every goodbye, she expertly forms a cross with her thumb and index finger, touches my forehead and blesses me. Que Diosito te bendiga. Now I got emotional. I miss my mom's bendición.
That was lovely. I think we all have love for our mother's hands, right?
So,
My comadre, Andrea Hernandez home on Facebook, asked for a poem of hope.
I just wrote one actually for Facebook for the COVID-19. Maybe, yeah, there's some that are about hope, about how things are not as bad as we might think. Maybe it's not just about hope, but about survival. Forjando el destino for Emma Tenayuca. And those of you who may not know, Emma Tenayuca was a labor organizer here in San Antonio back in the 1930s. And as a very young girl, was even put in jail at 17 for leading one of the largest revolts of a strike by the pecan shellers. So that's kind of a context. In the photo, you are a young, impassioned speaker. Fifth grade. I can hear your voice loud and clear. And I ask, what gave you the courage, Emma? I know the answer. With youth passion, you fought injustice, fought for the pecan shellers, women, young and old, and children too. You worked alongside of them, smelled the acrid smell, felt the stifling heat, felt the dust covered your hands and your hair, in spite of the scars you wore. And you heard them cough, and you laughed with them, and you cried with them. And it was time to say no more to wage cuts, no more to unsafe conditions. Time for the struggle to begin. Time for destiny to carry you on its wings. You had a gift, and you used it. Others followed. 12,000 workers walked away from poorly paid jobs, and the bosses had to listen, and the papers had to cover the story. And you won and lost. You had to go on your way. Destiny led you to California, away from the ex-husband, away from the embarrassed relatives, the nosy neighbors, the prying reporters. But destiny brought you back, a teacher, a shaper of young minds, to sustain language and culture, fighting injustice in another terrain. Your razor sharp mind never at rest, always working, always thinking. The books, the papers, your work. Honor and glory came late. Your memory lives in the hearts of those who knew you, those who never met you, but honor your passion and join you in the struggle still not won. Adelante, Emma.
What a community gift those poems are, Norma. Those are wonderful.
Thank you. And I think that poem is about hope because even with the struggle that she went through, she kept forging ahead.
Yeah. Well, adelante. I mean, what else can you do, right? Forward.
Onward, yes.
Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it, giving us a chance to check in with you and check in with our readers and our followers, and touch base with your work and in this, however we can right now, right?
Right. With everything else that's going on, we have to depend on poetry.
Yes, definitely. All right, we're going to sign off right now. And again, I appreciate your time so very much.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting, for the questions, for sharing. Adelante.